This is, I'm not gonna lie, this is a little overwhelming. So, I don't know, I got 5 people in here. Might just go, just do this. For all of you who are here, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna build a Firebase and React voting app. It's very similar to a Twitter poll. And so it's pretty much just going to be using the new React Fire library, which I'm very excited about. I think it's super cool. So I'm going to start just, kind of from scratch. And the reason why it's kind of from scratch is because I didn't want to spend all my time on the stream building the presentational components. So all that's taken care of. So I'm going to get going. All right, and let me know in the chat if anything gets weird with the stream, because this is my very, very, very first time using OBS or any streaming things, and there's like a really good chance I'm doing it wrong. So let's see how it goes. All right, so this right here is not anything really fancy. This is a thing. It's an app or a project with Create React app, so there's nothing really fancy. The only thing that's kind of fancy about it is the fact that I'm using an experimental version of React, and that is so I can get concurrent mode, and that's because we're also going to be using React Fire, and React Fire is not quite launched yet, but it's really cool and it's very close to being launched, and it relies on this experimental version of React. And you might ask me, like, David, why did you make a library, which it's not just me, I'm actually a very small part of the React Fire library, but why would you all make a library on an experimental version of React? And that's because we are couple of reasons. One, we are really excited about suspense for data fetching. That is a really big deal for us in the Firebase land. And if you're not familiar with suspense for data fetching, if you're familiar with suspense, we can tell React to wait until our component is finished loading with react.lazy, and data fetching just moves that down to the data level. And so that's really cool. So when data has not loaded, React knows that, hey, this component isn't fully there yet, and it really helps us with all the is loading flags and stuff. So you'll see a little bit more of that as we go on. So this is the only thing that's kind of different, and the fact that I'm using Tailwind. Tailwind is, I love Tailwind. It is a CSS framework where you can generate all these really awesome helpers and specify what font family, what specific colors. This is really minimal right here, but Tailwind's awesome. So if you haven't used Tailwind before, you should check it out because it's one of my favorite things. All right, so inside here, we have my index.js, and one of the things that I've gone ahead and done is I've done React DOM.createRoot, and this is enabling concurrent mode. So if you have not seen this before, if you're used to just calling React DOM.render, that's what we do today, but with concurrent mode, and I don't really know what's going to happen in the future with all that, but right now, if you're using the experimental version of React, which I am, you call .createRoot create root, pass in your root element .render. So it's just a little bit different, but this is all for now going to stay the same. And then I have my app.js, which really doesn't do much of anything. It returns back this vote view. Eventually, this is where I'd want to do all my routing and stuff like that, this being my top level app component. And then if I get into the pages and click on vote view doesn't really do much of anything. It returns a div because that's what we're going to do here in a second. So this right here, all my presentational components, they are very, very basic. So like container is just a div, and then I have my Tailwind classes to, give it some margins and padding and stuff like that. So none of these things are really all that crazy. So don't worry too much about what's happening here. All right, so let's go into vote view, and I guess I should check the comments before I go too deep. Let's see what's going on here. All right, everyone's just thanking me. That's always good. It's good to be thanked. All right, cool. So first thing we're going to do here is we are going to create the container. because containers are important. So this is just gonna, so I hit that. So we just kind of get everything centered in. And then I will make my header. So let's save that. Let's make sure I'm actually running on a port, which I don't think I am. So, or maybe I am on this one. Am I running? I am running. Cool. And I believe this is on 3001. So let's go to this one. Let's refresh that. Cool. All right, so that's what we have here. We have this voting header. All right. Oh, wait, you can't see that screen. I got to remember how to use OBS. All right. Where are we? Okay, so we are in the editor. So now I'm going to open up close out the editor. There we go. So this is what the app looks like so far. Just says voting. That's the header. But you can see that things are starting to work. So that's fun. So back into editor land. Let's see here. If I go into editor land, I'm going to start my main section. So just to sort of group things together. Main section, I believe, does not do anything super crazy. Now, VS Code sometimes takes a while when you export components as default to find them, I believe. All right, so I'll just go find it manually. Yeah, main section just provides some really consistent padding. So that way I can say, hey, this big main section has this big padding next to it. And then I have these, not between sections, but subsections that also just provide consistent padding, because it's really easy to not be consistent with your padding. All right, so now inside of the main section is where I want to start asking someone a question. So like what the poll question is. So I have a special little component for that called question heading. And then that would be something like, what is your favorite flavor of ice cream? All right, so that right there. And then what I'd actually do, because that's going to mess up, I want to put this in the subsection. All right. All right, so let's save and let's look how that looks. And I'll check what's going on in here. All right. And feel free to just leave anything in the chat, because that's what I'm here for. Stuck inside, Yeah, Hunter, Tailwind is so nice, and the docs are really cool. One of the coolest things about Tailwind with the docs is when you're searching around, they have this focus key, which I think is like the // I actually can't ever remember which one is which, but when you hit one of the slash keys, it will focus you to the search, and then you can quickly type in, you're like, oh, how do I apply padding, or what's the highest height level, or something like that, and you type in height, or you type in something and it pops down, and then you're like immediately in the docs. They thought through that really, really well. I'm a big fan of what they do. All right, so now remembering what to do next, I have to show you what the app looks like. All right, cool. So now we got this voting. What is your favorite flavor of ice cream? Nothing too crazy. Haven't done anything exciting yet. And then now I'm going to do another subsection, which I'll probably create some space here. And then now what I want to do is I want to render out some of the options that we can vote on. But to do that, I'm going to need some data. And so I actually have this nice little function here that returns fake initial data. And eventually we're going to get rid of this, and we're just going to load it in from Firebase. But right now, I'm just going to kind of get everything nice looking static, because when I make any app, or any JavaScript framework app for that matter, I really like to get things working statically first. So all the interactions and everything that are important in the app can be done, even if they're not meaningful, where the logic isn't implemented behind them. I like it so if you can click on something, you can see the transition happen, or you can see that the sort of the spirit of the app is working. And then I start piping in the data to it, so I can make sure I have one thing working really well before I move on to the next. So this fake initial data returns back these options, the results. So, it's basically the option merged with a percentage key. So like, what was the percentage of, is it 10% people voted for this, 100%? The question, what is your favorite ice cream flavor? And then voted false. So voted is whether the person actually clicked the button to vote. So we can actually pull all that back up here, and we can do it in this nice destructured way. And so it's fake initial data. And from here, fake initial data, let's pull back the question, and let's also pull back the options, and we can worry about the rest later. All right, so let's template out, even though template's not the right word. I don't know what that word is, variable? I don't know, because there's no templates in React. Just my Angular nomenclature taking over. All right, so now we have the question in there, and now let's do the vote options. And so I actually have a nice little presentational component with this, and they're basically just clickable divs. It's nothing too important. So it's vote option list. So vote option list, and that needs to take in the vote options. Save. All right, let's check that out. Let me switch my screens. Oh wow, I feel pretty honored. TensorFlow dropped in the chat. That's pretty cool. And James Spivey with the drop bomb runaway of Angular is better than React. Well, we're not here to have that argument. But nor I'm not getting into that. What am I doing? All right. All right. So now I got to go into the OBS. Why do I do this? Okay, cool. And look at that. My face is kind of messing that last part up. So actually I'm going to go and fix that, because this is, I'm not really styling this for desktop. So let's just go into phone mode. Nice. So this is really how it's meant to look. All right, cool. So I have that done. What I want to do now is be able to click on one of these and start voting. But if I do that, oh no, we got an error. And that's because nothing happens when you click. Also, I should probably make it in the app so if you click on them, that's not going to be an error. But that is for another day. So right here, what I need to do is pass in this onClick handler. And what this will actually do is it will return to me the option that was selected. So, oh wait, I did not switch back to the thing. Okay, let's go back to the editor. Aha, here we go. So what this does right here is this is on click. And so whenever I click on that, this is like, it aggregates all of the click handlers together. And so you have, like if I clicked chocolate, it goes and brings me back the chocolate option. And so this way I don't have to, I can just sort of manage it all in one funneled up click for no matter how many options are being rendered in this list. All right, so that works, but when this clicks, what I want to do is I want to say, hey, let's see what the results are. And right now it's going to be like 100% of one, or we could just kind of mess with it. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use a hook. So I'm going to say, what is this? I want to know what whether someone voted. And actually, it's not hooked just yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pass in the results and voted. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, because what I want to do now is let's just comment this out and let's pretend that we clicked and that worked. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the vote result list. Yes. And then that's going to take in, actually vote result list can be on one line, and this takes vote results, and that will be results. Now right now the way that the results are done is that we're just going to map or merge in the options and give them a percentage, but let's just pretend that they're all even so we can see something visually going on. I got a lot of thumbs up. Thank you. I like they just keep coming. But I guess our thumbs up spamming though, for me, I just see it as encouragement. It's all right, so I'm gonna move back to the browser. How do I? Okay. All right, cool. And so you can see it right now. It goes, what is your favorite ice cream flavor? And then, let's pretend this is all equal. And so that's sort of the way this works. I click on one, I'm gonna see this view. And so now let's set it up so when I click, they'll actually happen. Go back. Okay, cool. And all right. And here we go. So what we're going to do now is collapse that. is we are going to, it's because I commented that out. We want to say if you have voted, then show the vote result list. But if you have not voted, show the vote option list. And this can easily be done with a ternary operator in to say right up here, let's create a variable and call it const, what's what it called, view to render. Why not? And if you have voted, so yes, I have voted. Actually, if I have not voted, I'm going to start this way because I copied that one already. So if I have not voted, let's return the vote option list. And if I have voted, let's return the vote result list. All right, so that should work. Let me just insert that here. View to render and save. Now let's go back to the app. Let's see here. Oh, hey, Mike. Thanks for stopping by. And now what I'm going to do is switch to the app because I can't remember how to do that. All right, here we go. All right, cool. So I have not voted. So we see that. Cool. So what I want to do, though, is be able to make this, actually stateful, do something useful with it. And so for that, now I'm going to create a hook. And so let's create a hook where right now we'll call it react.useState. And the initial state can actually just be fake initial data. So if we pass all this in, this can be the initial state, and then we'll say state and set state. This isn't probably the best way of doing this, but it's just the way I'm going to do it right now because I'm going to eventually delete all this eventually. And so now we have our React state because inside of here, or here, where is it? Inside of vote option list, what I really want to do is I want to call set state, and I want to make sure the state remains mostly the same except for voted would be true. So when I click on it, these cool things can happen. What I need to do now is, since I put all this in state, change this to state.question. And then also, where is it? State.options and state.results. So it doesn't error out, and state.voted. Save for now. Hope that didn't break. And let's go back through OBS. Oh, yes, I missed one state before. Oh, yes, because I do it in the wrong spot. Yeah, that was going to be a problem. All right, we should probably declare our variables before we use them. It's usually a very important thing to do. There we go. So now save that. Let's see if it likes that. Okay, cool. It does. So let's go back to the editor, to the browser. And let's see here. Back to the browser. All right, cool. So now if I click on vanilla, doesn't really matter. It's not going to calculate the votes, but we can now click and go to one versus the other. So that works. That's really cool. And I'm actually going to go through and delete a lot of this, but I wanted to show this because there's a very interesting, I want to show how you would use your typical React.useState, your typical common hooks, with how you'd use things against React Fire. And so what's great about hooks is just with this like simple line of code, and I can call set state, I can change this, I could break these out into little hooks if I wanted to. That's really cool. But with React Fire, there's actually something very similar you can do. So to set this up to use React Fire, what we're going to do, oh no, I killed my server. I don't want to do that. What we are going to do is go to another one, and I'm going to do a yarn add of Firebase and React Fire. And React Fire is a peer dependency of Firebase, which means that we want to make sure that the Firebase is not like a hard dependency of, oh, it is taking over my screen. 1 second. So that way you can use multiple versions of Firebase with React Fire. All right, so this is installing. I probably should have done this beforehand. So while that is installing, I'm going to take you out to the Firebase console. Let me check to see what's going on. All right. Let's see. I should do some polls or something so I could just be like, hey, what do you think of hooks? I don't really know. Here, I'll just write it in the chat. What does everyone think of React hooks? I like them. All right. And now it's going back into OBS. And what I want to do, actually, cool. No, I'm in the right spot. Oh man, I didn't switch back my browser, so you didn't see me install any of that. Let me cover that real quick because I didn't. All right, so here, what I'm doing is I'm installing yarn add Firebase React Fire. Because it needs to be installed to be used, and should have done it beforehand, but it's taken a while right now, probably because I am eating up all the bandwidth with this stream. But let's go into Firebase, the console that is, and see what's going on. So make sure everyone can see. All right, cool. All right, so this is the Firebase console, and it's a magical place. And what we are going to do, we're going to do a couple things here. First thing is I want to go into my app, and I'm going to click this little settings gear. I've already created this Firebase app. I'm going to click this config, and then this is my Firebase config. Now, this is a really important piece of configuration because it tells your app how to talk to your Firebase backend. And to clear up some common like fears that people have when they see this, they get kind of skittish because they see things like API key, auth domain, database URL, and they believe, right, and they have a right, instant fear of, oh, I'm going to be exposing all of this, sensitive information. I'm putting these private keys into my client app, which putting private keys in your client app is a bad thing. So that is a good reason why these are not private keys. These are all effectively public keys. There's nothing wrong with including them in your app. And that's because with Firebase, you can secure things with our security rules layer. And that way it doesn't really matter if someone has these credentials, just in the way it doesn't matter if someone has your website URL. All right, so let's copy that again. Copied. And I hope things are installed by now. Let me check up on the install status. It is still installing. Okay, so while it is still installing, let me check the chat. Oh, Kevin Lloyd is mixed on React hooks. Let's see here. Kevin, what about React hooks don't you like? My computer is just like shutting down between this, between the install and streaming this. All right, let's see here. Let's keep moving along. And is the install still going? It is still going. Okay. So let's go back to this and let's do a little tour of the database. All right, so this is Firestore, and Firestore is a NoSQL document database, which is a very wordy way to say that you have, that it's not SQL, and so you're not going to be writing SQL queries, but you have these collections. And collections are lists of documents, and then documents contain fields. And let's ignore this sub-collection part here. So we have a collection of polls. And so right now we're only working on one poll, but potentially we could work on multiple polls. And a single poll is a document. And so the document has an ID of ice cream. and you could actually add multiple of these, and those would represent multiple polls. And you could also think about this ID of ice cream as the same thing as a route parameter. So if your website, whatever, like voterealtimepolls.com/ice cream, we could link those up and start rendering data from here. It doesn't happen to be that way, just sometimes that's a nice pattern that people do. And then here we have options. And so one of the data types that a field can take in is an array. And so this array is an object where the ID and the text is effectively the same. We would probably want like an actual ID in here, but since right now I'm just sort of saying I know that all the values are going to be unique, I make the ID and the text the same. And then question, what is your favorite ice cream flavor? And so what we're going to do is we're going to use React Fire to reach out to this single document, and we can render the data from Firestore. If everything has downloaded, let's see if that's been the case. Yes, we have downloaded. Oh, Kevin, you're afraid that you're going to remove classes from React. Yeah, they could. I don't think they will, though. They have they've made it pretty clear in the document that hooks are sort of just this future-proofing thing. So you can definitely, I hope that quells any fear that you have. And Hunter asks, thoughts on Firestore versus the real-time database? So that's a great question because it's a bit of a nuanced answer. So the real-time database, it's the original. It is really amazing at its simplicity of just being able to spin up, a database so quickly. The REST endpoints to it are extremely simple. Just append.json onto any URL, and you have an instant REST API. And also just the data structuring on it is for simple data. Like if you're synchronizing settings, or if your data is not very hierarchical, that's always a hard word to say, hierarchical. It's definitely not how you say that. It's really great for those things. And I build lots of stuff, and I use it to create a lot of like data pipelines. So I do a lot of like real-time data visualizations, and all the data I source through, I actually usually do it with the real-time database because setting stuff up with it is just insanely easy. With Firestore is also very simple, but it does have more constraints to it because it cares deeply, deeply about scaling. So when your data is hierarchical, it's perfect. It's a nice fit when you have a lot stronger querying constraints, because Firestore is stronger querying. That's a really good spot for that. So it really depends on your data structure, I guess is what the long thing I'm saying, and what your use case is. They both can scale really well. The real-time database might require some hand sharding, so like manual sharding on your side to scale higher, whereas Firestore is just going to handle that. So it really just depends on your needs, but they're both great. And I use them both pretty much on a daily basis, just depending on what I need. So I hope that helps. All right, so now since we're installed, let me make sure to remember to switch my screen because that's important. And here we go. All right, so we've installed this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out to the very top, up to index.js, because the first thing I want to do, I did copy, yes, my API keys are in there. So I'm going to import from React Fire. And so the way that Firebase works is that you need to initialize with that configuration. So we have a Firebase app provider. And so this is a very React-y way of doing so. And so what I'm going to do right here, just to kind of simplify things, I'm going to create a Firebase wrapped. And I could have it taken the config, even though this is going to get kind of redundant. But I'm going to return a Firebase app provider. And then I'm going to return my app. And then this is going to pass through a Firebase config with config. And then now when I go to render, I'm just going to pass in Firebase wrapped. And then let's create a variable. So const config equals this. And ideally, I would store this in a separate file and just sort of import it up here, but I'm just going to be lazy right now. And so now when I pass in config, it's config. And so this gives me access to just start working with Firebase. And the nice thing about it is we do this once upstream, and then we don't have to worry about it pretty much ever again. So now so this is there. Let's go back to Vote View. Let's save everything. And now I'm going to import from React Fire here. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import a hook called use Firestore. No, just use Firestore. And also use Firestore doc data. So well, actually we'll get into this in a second. So here are two hooks that we're going to use. And we're going to do it to replace this fake initial data for now. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get the DB by just calling use Firestore. And what's happening behind the scenes here is really cool. So since we've initialized Firebase up top, it will actually go into the provider and it will pull Firestore out of the app. Because usually if this is the vanilla JavaScript version of the Firebase SDK, you would do something like this. You would say firebase.initialize app and pass in that config. And then up top, you would be doing something like import, Firebase/Firestore to have that work. And then you would call app.firestore. And this would be the same thing as this DB right here. But behind the scenes, what's happening is we are initializing the app and we're importing Firestore on your behalf, but we're also importing Firestore lazily. So we're doing it with a dynamic import, which is going to get auto-chunked by Webpack, which is, depending on how you set it up, can be a really nice performance boost. So that way Firestore starts working behind the scenes. It loads behind the scenes, and it does not have to be tied into the load of your page, which can really, really increase performance. And it can also, you can still have the app being interacted with while you're waiting for that data to load in. So now we have the DB, and what I would want to do is I want to get the question. So the way I can do that is one of the hooks, just call this data for now. I'll change that, and we'll say use Firestore doc data. And so you can see from VS Code's little helper that this takes in a reference and a document reference at that. And so what we need to do is we create a document reference that points out to that location. So what I do there is I will create the polls doc, and that right there will be db.doc. Actually, I'll start with collection, db.collection. So I want to go into the polls collection, and then I can call .doc to get to that single doc, and I'm just going to hard code it in right now as ice cream. And you can see that this is where we could start doing that route parameter style thing where I say, okay, I get the parameter from reach router or whatever my routing choice is, and I could template that out in here so it pulls back dynamically. And that would be really all you would have to do to have a different poll load. So now that I have the polls doc, let's pass that in there. And now let me save this because I know a problem's about to happen. And let me go check to see what's going on in the stream. Real-time data have the same fate as React classes. Well, it depends on what you think is going to happen to React classes. But no, it's alive and well. All right, so I should probably do another question. What's a question I should put in there? What do you all use? I was just jump on the hooks. So I'm going to ask, what is your most used hook? For me, it's use effect. All right. So now let's go look at the app that I know is going to break. So back in this, let's move over. Oh, it did not break. Why did it not break? It should have break. Did it not save or run again? Let's see here. Okay, well, let's do this. Let's log data. All right. Okay, so that's working. Let's go into the console. All right, seems that it is not, oh, I think it's detached from the server. So let's do a refresh. Cannot be reached. Why can't it be reached? Let's see here. What's going on? So basically what's happening right now, to avoid the need of going totally silent to figure out what's going on, is that I'm trying to run this dev server and it says it's running, but it's not running on that port. So I'm going to rerun it and see what's happening. Because I believe that when I accidentally stopped the server, that just caused lots of problems. Okay, oh, it's running on 3000 now, that's why. Okay, so let's go to 3000. All right, and this should break once it loads. Kevin, component did mount is a class lifecycle method. Use effect is the kind of the hook version of component did mount and component did unmount and all the other lifecycle methods. All right, so let's see. Oh, yay, it's breaking. All right, cool. So this is the breakage I wanted to see. All right, so right now we are trying to just get that data back, but it says vote view suspended while rendering, but no fallback was specified. And that's because the two things you get underneath the hood with React Fire is, one, you get hooks, but two, you get suspense for data fetching built in. And let's take a look at how that is happening. So right here we have called use Firestore doc data, and it returns back data. Now logically, let's think about this. You have, you know that Firebase is extremely asynchronous. So since we have to call over the network to get that data, it's not going to block the main thread until that data gets back. So usually that data is done in a callback. And to kind of show that, you say polls doc. If we were just calling the vanilla JavaScript SDK, we'd call on snapshot. That would return the snapshot. And then inside of this block, this callback function is where I can, tap into that data. But that's not synchronous. I don't say const data equals this. That doesn't do anything. So I have to update this data asynchronously. Now, why is it then, if I have to get data asynchronously, that I can synchronously get this data back? Well, the appearance is synchronous, but it's actually still asynchronous behind the scenes, because that's how suspense works. So with suspense, it uses a lot of crazy magic that I still to this day don't think I've fully wrapped my head around. But basically, it allows you to throw a promise. So just like how you'd throw an error. And effectively what's happening is that React is able to see while this promise is being thrown that things aren't being fulfilled yet. It hasn't been downloaded. And then when it does download, you kind of mark it as complete, and then that will return it back. So all this is suspended until it's ready. And then when it's ready, it's synchronous. So it's not synchronous. It sort of just waits until it happens. And then when we're done waiting, we know the value's there. So it's kind of crazy, and that's probably a pretty bad explanation of it. But I'll work on my own understanding as we go along. So what I need to do to fix that error is I want to go into my app.js, and I need to wrap this in a suspense container, which I don't know if that's the right word for it. So what I usually do is I do this thing where I call them wrappers. So I'm going to call it vote view wrapper. And inside of here, I'm going to return react.suspense and then vote view. And then suspense takes in a fallback. And so a lot of times you'll see people just be like div lol loading, something like that. I have something that's slightly better. So I'm going to import from my presentational component. This is something you'll commonly also see as like a spinner or something like that. So components, and I think it's, I can just components is loading view. And so while we're waiting for it to load, it will do that. It will show the loading view. I need to do a loading view as a component. Now this isn't fully going to get me, and then I need to return the vote view wrapper. So this isn't fully though going to get me what I want, because the issue here is while this will work, we're not fully optimizing. And that's because what we'd really want to do is like asynchronously load this as well. In this case, that's actually not the most it's not the most like pertinent thing to do, because it is the home page. But what you'll see for like another route, so if this was like, if we had like a landing page where it was like create your poll today, and then you went into the actual poll view, what you could do is actually create this, you could split this out with react.lazy. And so here it's a vote view equals react.lazy. And that is a callback function where we just do a dynamic import. And now this all happens asynchronously. Webpack is going to chunk all these things up. So like I said, since this is the only page we're loading, this is, if anything, it actually might be detrimental to performance. But if this was a sub route, this would be the exact right thing to do, is that we lazy load the view and then we have it, loaded through suspense. So this will fix us. So let's actually go into here. I want to console log data just one more time, just to show everything that's in it. So if I save, now let's go back. Oh my gosh, I did not switch the screen, did I? This is why this is the first test run. All right, I'm gonna go back to that. All right, so I just did all that stuff. All right, so basically what we are gonna do here, what I just explained, is we went through and created a suspense route for our container, suspense wrapper, whatever it's called, for our vote view. And we give it a fallback of loading view. And then we are asynchronously loading the view itself. So this is going to be chunked up by Webpack. And so this can be really great for page load performance if this is like a sub route, because this means that your initial page will not have this code loaded in it. And so if this is a lot of code, which we're loading some Firebase libraries inside of it, like Firestore, so Firestore wouldn't be included on our page until we needed it. And then using things like service workers or link-rel preload, we can start to actually pre-cache these files. So when the user does get to it, it will be really fast. So there's a lot of really cool performance techniques that you can do with suspense in React.lazy. All right, and I really need to remember to switch my screen. All right, so here we go. Let's move back to the thing. All right, cool. So here we are, and we can see that we have this double console.log, and that's because we're in dev mode, I believe. So you get this double render. In production, this goes away. And we have our options, which this all looks familiar, and our question. So now we can start replacing this. And there's a bit of a gotcha I will show you that I suffered myself. So now let me remember to switch the screen. Yes. And let me go back into this app, and let's go back to vote view. All right, so inside of here, we have this data. So we can actually destructure this data out. So that's question and options. And let's get rid of that here. And now what I want to do is, since I want to get rid of these, I'll show you. So what you might have the temptation to say, oh, well, I'm already syncing certain things or I'm already putting certain things into state. So my question's in state, my options are in state. I'm just going to take them from React Fire, and I'm going to put it into my local hook for use state. And that was the same idea I had too when I first started doing working with hooks and Firebase. And that's actually not going to work with React Fire. And let me show you why. So I'm going to save this. And just so to recap, we are just taking the questions and the options from use Firestore doc data, and we are putting it into local state. So let's go back into the app. Awesome. And so here in the app, we have, what is your favorite ice cream flavor? Now, if you know anything about Firestore, one of the most amazing things about it is I can update data in real time. So let's add just like a couple more exclamation marks. You see that updated. And then here, that's not updating. If I refresh my page though, it's updating. So like, what's the deal? And that's because when you try to sync data from the two, you're going to run into this problem because of the way that kind of hooks work. I would have to run some of these updates in a use effect, and then at this point you're completely like removing the point of using React Fire. So what do I do to get this to update? Well, it's actually very simple. Let's go and switch my screen again. Awesome. So here what I want to do is I actually don't want to sync them at all, and that's because underneath the hood, use Firestore doc data actually uses suspense for data fetching, and then it calls use effect under the hood, so it updates everything for you. So you actually only need to call this hook to get everything back. So now what I can do is I can find options, remove them from state, and then inside of question, remove that as well, save it. Let's go back to the app. And there we go. And now let's go and let's change this, and without the need of a refresh, everything should work. Yeah, see, this will update in real time now. And so all I have to do is call use Firestore doc data, use whatever Firebase hook, and that actually updates the view for me. So there's no need to sync the two. All right, so now let's switch the screen again. I have to say that out loud every time so I do not forget. Let me check the chat. All right, we're good. All right, now what I want to do is I want to make it so when I click, I can see some results. So I'm actually going to delete results from the state because I'm going to compute them on the fly. And I'll show you that in just a second. So I'm going to let's get rid of results. And then actually we can get rid of this entirely now. And instead of state, we'll just call this voted. And we'll call this set voted because that's the only piece of local state. So I always refer to this as remote state and this as local state because it's what's locally happening, stuff you do not save out to a database. And then remote state is stuff that you are pulling in from a database. And so they're just, they can be merged into one like sort of thought, but I like to think about them as separate. So we have set voted, and then now what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to call react.useState and pass in false. So the initial state will be false. We have not voted. So now let's go through and just remove a lot of these state dots. And results is going to be null right now, so just call const results. And with results, what I'd like to do is be able to calculate the results based upon how people have voted. So let's just make that empty array right now. Save. Okay, cool. All right, well, let's see what's going on. Oh, it's 1:30. Okay, how long have I been doing this? Okay, you know what? Because set state is not defined. Let me fix this with errors first. So what we'd do here is we'd say set voted, and then we just say set voted to true, or we could even pass in the option of what's voted. So now save that. And when we click, nothing's going to happen because it's an empty array, but that is what we're going to do next time. Is we're going to got the data from Firestore. When we click, we're going to start, let me pull back the app. When we click, we're going to start looking at how votes are calculated. So votes are a sub-collection of the poll. And there's a single document for each one, and that's the same ID as we can see here. So the ID of chocolate is here. Like if they were real IDs, they would, map over here. And so chocolate is a document in the sub collection, and what we have is this field called count, and that is how many times it has been voted for. And you can see with Rocky Road 10, strawberry 8, vanilla 10. And then all of these are going to add up to some number. And then from there, you can do some math and you can show in real time the calculations. And so next time, that's what we're going to cover. We're going to cover how do I read data from a collection, and then how I can, use that to, show the percentages, and how I can also do increments of voting too, because that can be tricky in a real-time system. All right, that is what I got today. I was here for about an hour. Hey, Eli, here right as I'm leaving. But if you were here, give me a shout out on Twitter or something. I really appreciate you all. This is the first time I did this, and it was a fun experience. So thank you all for joining me, and make sure to like and subscribe. I know, Eli. I know, I'm really sorry. We'll get it next time. I have to go to a meeting. See you all later.